Let us all welcome Wing Commander Sankaranarayanan Balasubramanian 71 War Hero. So we have on the call today Wing Commander Suresh Karnik sir, another VRC, and we have also Group Captain Das sir, DK Das, another VRC, and Jadvir Patek Saab and all other air warriors on the call. So let's all welcome today's hero sir, 1971 hero. Wing Commander Balasubramanian sir. He is now speaking to us from USA. Right now he is in USA. So let us all listen. Welcome him sir. Welcome sir, Wing Commander Bala sir for today's webinar. With all our air warriors, we have a
Good
special
morning
guest
and welcome, sir.
like Professor Y. Sachinagar also. And now introduce our today's speaker, Wing Commander Subramanian sir. So he was born in a village, Ranchi, Bihar, and commissioned into Indian Air Force on 4th June 1967 through NDA 97 course. And he's after serving for 2 decades, he retired from Indian Air Force on 20th May 1986 for his display of gallantry, professional skill, and also the devotion to duty of high order during 1971 operations. He was awarded Vir Chakra for his bravery. So now let's all welcome him to today's talk. Welcome, sir. And you may take us through your journey, starting from your how you got motivated into joining into Indian Air Force. Thereafter, a brief story about your particularly with particular reference to your 1971 action, sir. Welcome, sir. So you may take us through.
Namaskar and good morning, my friend.
Good morning, sir. Good morning,
So
sir.
nice
Good morning, sir. Jai Hind to all, sir.
to
Jai
be
Hind.
with you people, my Air Force family. It's happening after a long, long time, and I must thank Rao Garu and Patakji for making this happen, getting this group together and giving us a direction in which we're moving very well. I must find out what is it that Rao Garu and Patakji eat, because the drive, the motivation, the josh that they have is out of this world. In fact, I'm thinking of starting a startup to market that food, and I'm sure we will do very well. I was born in Ranchi in 1945, and during my high school, my dad asked me whether I wanted to join NDA. My dream was to become a railway engine driver, which used to be the common interest those days. But when my dad talked about NDA and the Defense Forces, I said that was a good choice because that would keep me off the studies in college. And I readily agreed. Army was out of question because I had seen the army units around my house and they worked very hard. They had to work very hard. The choice was between the Navy and the Air Force.
Sir, but one I may intervene you that how come you were born in Ranchi, sir? Being I think Subramanian being Tamilian name.
If I could fight a war for India, why couldn't I go to school anywhere in the
country? Okay.
My dad was a scientist and he was working in a central government Ministry of Agriculture in Ranchi, the institute called Indian Lac Research Institute. It was a research establishment and that's where I grew up. And I'm thankful for that because the community I grew up, about 30, 40 families, it was awesome. It was a great childhood. It was always us and no I. In fact, my personality, my attitude is greatly because of that joint family and of course my parents. So I was asked by my dad about joining NDA and I had to choose between Air Force and the Navy. Now, as you know, whatever goes up must come down. But what goes down doesn't have to come up. So I decided Air Force is a better choice.
Okay.
I studied in a Hindi medium school. I was not a very athletic guy. In fact, I was underweight. But NDA was in my focus and I had to work very hard and I got selected. I joined the National Defense Academy in 1962, went through the training. In 65, went off of flying training. And I was lucky. I got excellent instructors in Allahabad, Jodhpur, and Hakimpet. These instructors made me what I am today.
Okay.
I was commissioned in 1967 and I was posted to 20 Squadron Air Force, the Lightnings.
Right, sir.
I served with Lightnings for 5.5 years. I saw through 3 commanding officers, a dozen flight commanders. I was the oldest member for a long time.
Okay.
And then after the war, I moved over to MiG-21s. We were flying the Hunters during the war. And MiG-21s in 7th Squadron, Chandigarh. After a short stint, I was posted for my instructor's course in FIS, Tambaram. After the course, I did a stint in Bidar and in a foreign country training rookie pilots, fresh pilots, and it was a very satisfying job. I was also on the staff of the flight instructor school for some time. I finished my staff college in 1980 and I was back to MiG-21 squadron.
Sir.
Thereafter, in 1985, I was transferred to Air India. My last posting was in Air Force Academy, Dindigul, Hyderabad. In Air India, I continued to fly and I became an examiner instructor on the Airbus aircraft. And ultimately, I had quit after I had finished my stint as a simulator instructor on the Boeing 787. I also had the privilege of flying the Prime Minister of India then. I was lucky to fly Shri Atal Bihari Vajpayee, then Prime Minister, as Air India 1. And I was also lucky that I was part of the force that evacuated a large number of thousands of Indians from Amman after Iraq invaded Kuwait.
Yes, sir.
All in all, I had an aviation career spanning over 50 years.
50 years of flying.
Not
It's like a golden jubilee.
A number of flying and last 4-5 years was as simulator instructors.
Sir.
Last 13-14 years, I've been also a trustee with an NGO in Mumbai called Indian Development Foundation. We look after poor children, we do women empowerment, and it's an NGO which has been recognized by the United Nations, and that keeps me busy. Now, on this Swarnim Varsh, let's get back to the war. Now, my first posting was in 20 Squadron, Lightnings at Hindon. We were flying.
So that's all in a nutshell, almost more than I think 50 years.
Yes. No, this was after, in 67, I was posted to Hindon, 20 Squadron. And in 71, I'm talking of 1971, we were based at Hindon. So I was posted to 20 Squadron at Hindon. We were flying the Hunter Mark 56A. These aircraft were slightly different from the other Hunters in that we carried a lot of extra fuel. We had 2 inboard tanks of 230 gallons and that gave us a tremendous range and it was probably the longest range for a fighter aircraft in the inventory of Indian Air Force at that time. I had the privilege of being commanded by Air Marshal C.V. Parker, MVCVM, then a wing commander, and 2 stalwarts, late Squadron Leader Jalmistry VrC and Squadron Leader A.D. Rosario as our flight commanders. The war clouds were building up and our squadron was moved to Pathankot, which I think was a very wise move because Pathankot was just a few minutes flying time from the international border. And that this move gave us extreme range or depth of attack. In the months before the war, the squadron worked very hard. We checked out our aircraft. We did a lot of training for air combat as well as ground operations.
Sir.
Our serviceability was brought up in spite of the fact that spares were low, and we practiced and practiced. The highlight of our preparation was briefing sessions which went on for hours, and everyone was allowed to air his views. It was so good that by the time the war started, we were fully geared for the actual missions and we could do the missions without any RT communication. These briefings were also done with civil clothes inside so that in case we had to bail out, we had plans to escape in our civil clothes. The orderly room, I was also the adjutant of the squadron at that time. The orderly room continued to function right through the war. We saw the mails, sent replies to important mails, and all returns were made on time. But Pathankot, being so close to the border, had its own perils, and expecting a preemptive attack by Pakistan didn't leave us very comfortable. Just to save our aircraft, we used to frequently pull them back to safer bases. I remember it was end of November when our aircraft were pulled back to Ambala. As the tension heightened, we were asked to move further back to Hindon. And it was late in the afternoon when about 10 or 12 of our aircraft were starting out to go to Hindon. As luck would have it, as I watched the other aircraft one by one start up, taxi and go, my aircraft refused to start. My men worked very hard. But by the time they got the aircraft going, it was dark. And the taxi track where I was parked did not have any lights. I got 2 men, 2 of our airmen, to ride on their bikes with torches in hand. They helped me taxi all the way to the... While the ATC gave me taxi permission, they refused to give me the runway lights for a takeoff, and it was dark. A lot of requests followed, and then at last they relented and they gave me 1 side runway lights. But that was enough for Bala, and I started my takeoff roll. But alas, within a short time, the lights went off. The ATC officer probably had been very hasty in putting off the light. Still, I was on the ground. But then, realizing his mistake, he put on the light, but the opposite side of the light. I almost felt as if my aircraft has jumped over the light from left to right. Nevertheless, carried on with the takeoff and landed at Hindon on that cold, bitter cold night. And I remember the station commander's jeep was there with a cup of hot coffee. As you all know, PAF carried out attacks on our airfield on the 3rd evening. Late in the night of 3rd, we were in the officers' mess, sitting around a transistor, and we heard from voice of our Prime Minister, then Prime Minister Srimati Indira Gandhi, on her resolve to teach Pakistan a lesson. On the fourth morning, around 3-4 o'clock, 12 of our aircraft took off from Hindon for Pathankot because that was our base to mount our operations. The northern India was totally black because of blackout, totally dark. And short while later, we reached over Pathankot. Imagine about 12 aircraft in a loose formation came over Pathankot. And then suddenly there was Diwali. The whole sky lit up with red flashes. It was a beautiful sight. But it took us a few seconds to realize that our anti-aircraft guns had opened upon us. And the aircraft, to save ourselves, they peeled off left, right, in all directions. It was a big surprise. Very akin to what the Americans got at Pearl Harbor in the Second World War when the Japanese aircraft attacked. A lot of RT communication followed and the guns were lowered, and one by one, all our aircraft landed, thankfully. I guess the communication facilities those days was not very good, and this was the result of that. As I walked out of my pen after switching off, I saw two hunters taking off on a mission, which later I was to find that it was my squadron commander and Flight Lieutenant Dhillon on the first mission of our squadron. In the squadron, the spirit was high. It was excitement. Every time the flight commander came with a mission order, the pilots would start making noise. They all wanted to be included in the flight. It's my turn. I'm senior. All kinds of things used to happen. I wish I had a video camera to shoot the spirit of the squadron. I was lucky to be included as number 2 in a 4-aircraft formation that afternoon for a strike over Muri. We reached after a short briefing. I reached my pen while being strapped in. My men, one by one, they came and wished me luck. But I remember one particular request which was so unique. One airman, I'm sorry, I don't remember his name. He came to me, "Sir, ek kaam kijiyega." He wanted me to destroy a yellow building in the northern side of the airfield because that building belonged to his grandfather and he didn't want any Pakistani living in it. I touched his shoulder. I said, yeah, I will definitely try to do that. We took off on time and set course for Murid airfield. We were keeping low to stay below the radar of Pakistan, and the navigation was done with the help of maps held on your left hand. To navigate, there was no GPS those days. We used to draw a pencil line on the map all the way to destination, turning over important points and calculating the time, running time from takeoff, so that you could keep a check on time and correct for it, because time or attack had to be maintained very meticulously. As and when you crossed over a point which you recognized, you corrected for your deviation from the track left or right, and also for your speed. And the thumb moved over the line to the recognized waypoint. I give that navigation system a name called a TPS, thumb positioning system, because we didn't have a GPS. We're flying at 360 knots inside the country. And once in Pakistan airspace, we increased speed to 420, which would be further increased to 480 knots, closer to the target. Keeping our eyes open for enemy aircraft, birds, high tension cables. It was interesting. As we closed in on our pull-up point. Pull-up point is a point at which the aircraft pulls up from that 200-300 feet upwards. When you go up, more of the earth is visible and one selects the suitable target for the attack. My leader pulled up, followed by me, and I was lucky. I spotted the nose, a pointed nose of an aircraft in a pen. The upward motion was arrested by going almost on my back and rolling out and putting the aircraft in a dive. By now, the surprise element was over. The enemy anti-aircraft guns had opened up and the sky started filling up with white and black puffs all around us. A quick look at the sky to see if there was no air threat, no aircraft threat for me. I pressed on with the attack. At the correct range, I pressed my trigger. My 4 guns of 30 mm each, firing at the rate of 20 rounds per second each, would not leave anything. In less than a second, the aircraft exploded. The target aircraft exploded and there was flame and smoke when I pulled out of it.
So that's really great, sir. So that aircraft was on the runway, sir? On the airfield?
Just say that again.
No, you targeted the aircraft on the airfield, sir?
Yeah, it was just a little bit was visible and it's just and the spread of the gun is so good. The high explosive rounds of the gun, it has a good spread and at the correct range of fire, it's devastating. That aircraft is called the God's.
Okay. So what was the type of aircraft? Yours was Hunter bomber, sir? Fighter bomber?
I was flying was the Hunter, and the aircraft which was inside, it was either a 104 or a MiG-90. We do not know because it was a pointed nose.
Sir.
And the intelligence later on brought a photograph of the airfield with smoke coming out of the pen that I had claimed. Smoke, and the smoke was trailing, long smoke, which of course the Air Force refused to give me a copy. Fortunately, we did not encounter any air resistance, and we turned back and reached home safely.
Was there any ground attacks? I mean, ground firing, sir? Was there any ground firing, sir? Ground firing.
Oh, I told you,
you probably
missed it. You probably missed it. There was heavy anti-aircraft fire. Very, very heavy. There was a whole sky was full of black and white puffs.
Okay. I'll come on to laptop. There was an issue. Yes, sir.
Heavy ground fire.
Okay, sir.
Heavy.
Okay, sir.
And since my job is to carry on with the attack, you ignore the top anti-aircraft gun shooting and you just press on your attack. That is what is.
Okay. Okay, sir. Right.
Back at the pen, all 4 aircraft came back safely and we landed, switched off. Men were very happy, and I explained to them what happened. They literally carried me on their shoulders to the jeep that was waiting.
That's really great. Okay.
Unfortunately, I did not have the time or could not locate the yellow building, so that stayed.
Yeah.
That was on the 4th of December.
Sir.
On 5th December, I was again included in a 4 aircraft formation, which was to attack Miawali, which was at the extreme range of our capability, fuel-wise.
Okay.
And it was a dangerous mission because we had to cross 3 or 4 Pakistani airfields which had fighter aircraft on them and also a good radar cover. But we were lucky because the leader of the formation was our squadron commander, Officer himself. And we knew we will succeed. Unfortunately, his aircraft did not start, so he could not come. But since the target had to be hit at the specific time, the number 3, who was Flight Lieutenant Dhillon, Chani Dhillon, he took over the lead, and our 3 aircraft took off for Miawali. After takeoff, after flying for a few minutes from Pathankot, Chani Dhillon's aircraft also went unserviceable and he had to turn back. And it left just 2 of us. And I got the lead. I was the leader for the longest, one of the longest strikes that we had to do. My number 2 was Lieutenant Arun Prakash, who later became the naval chief. Admiral Arun Prakash went on to become the chief of the naval staff. He was also awarded a grade. And he was a naval pilot who was attached to our squadron. So 2 of us made our way at low level with TPS, thumb positioning system. We navigated all the way and we reached Miawali. And we, once again, when I pulled up the aircraft, the picture was exactly the same as the previous day. I saw an aircraft, nose of an aircraft, and we pushed ahead and attacked. I got this night fighter inside the pen, and Arun Prakash got a transport aircraft which had parked in place.
Great, really great, sir.
Yes, good luck. We did not have air opposition, although I did see one enemy fighter aircraft, but it was in the opposite direction, and I knew it was not a threat to us, and we returned back safely.
Hats off to you, sir, for your excellent strikes with 100% precision. Despite the difficulties or ground fire, all these odds, and penetrating deep into the enemy territory, that's a great part of it.
I know. So what happens is when Pathankot is so close to the border, 3 minutes flying time, I told you, there's a problem. Every evening, half an hour after sunset, a Pakistani bomber used to come overhead and keep dropping bombs the whole night. One aircraft would finish and go back, another would come. We probably took the maximum number of bomb droppings during the war. The bombs were not a nuisance, but what was a problem was the anti-aircraft guns. They make a lot of noise. And there was a battery just behind the officers' mess. And the whole night they would be firing. And we couldn't sleep. And the sleep was a must because we were flying in the daytime. I went to have my dinner on the evening of 5th. And I was narrating the story to the waiter in the mess. One thing I do believe, that everybody has something to teach you. You meet anybody.
Of course, sir. Yeah.
The waiter heard my story and my problem. Arey Saab ji, iska to aasan tarika hai. Aap aisa karo. I listened to him patiently. Left my plate, got up and walked out, went to the bar, ordered 2 large rums and a Coke. I never used to drink. I downed 2 large rums and a Coke, came back, finished my dinner and went to sleep. I went to sleep before my head hit the pillow. I never heard a thing. And this was repeated for the rest of the morning. Very comfortably. I had a very good sleep. In the morning, Bala used to be fresh and bright.
So it was a good idea.
Don't do that home, you'll be thrown out.
That time it worked. Yes, sir.
So it worked very well. On the morning of 8th, at about 4 o'clock, I was woken up from my bed for a mission. On some intelligence report, we had to attack Chaklala Airport. half an hour before sunrise. And once again, I was the number 2 to my squadron commander, Parker, sir. We headed towards Chaklala. It was still dark when we attacked the airfield, whatever installations we attacked, and then we were turning back. We had lots of fuel. There's not enough light, so we kept our speed brakes out and kept high power to burn extra fuel. And we were flying in a broad formation like this. Parker was on the left, I was on the right towards the Pakistan border. We kept our eyes open because the border was so close. And lucky, because suddenly I saw 2 aircraft orbiting on the right side. In the dim light that I could pick it up, it was lucky.
Sir.
So immediately I called out, bogies, 4 o'clock, 3 kilometers, slightly high. And I expected a reaction from my leader. There was total silence. After a few seconds, his voice came on the radio. They are our boys, meaning they were aircraft from our own station of Pathankot. I didn't still like the situation. I kept an eye on them. And thank God I kept an eye because I saw them break formation and turn towards us. And I saw the formation break and turn towards me and getting on my tail. Surely they had seen us, chasing us now. I gave another call. Bogey behind me, sir. They're getting behind me. Parker, sir, in his baritone voice, replied, relax. But Bala was not relaxed. I could see the aircraft almost coming behind me. 2 aircraft.
Okay.
And I put my speed brake in and I was ready to turn left or right hard if I saw any firing taking towards me. My heart was pumping very fast. I said, something is going to happen. Something is going to happen. I waited 5 seconds, 10 seconds. I lost them behind me because they must have been absolutely 6 o'clock behind me. You can't see. You can't turn your neck so much. 10 seconds. Nothing happened. 15 seconds. 2 minutes. 10 minutes. Nothing happened. And we came back and landed. Back in the mess at lunchtime, I met a colleague of mine from the other sister squadron, Flying Officer Galawat. Remember you? He was on an interview with you.
He was on the collegiate. Yes, sir.
Flying Officer Galawat came across and he had a face which didn't look normal. He blurted, Bala, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry, Bala. I said, what happened? He said, I almost killed you.
Okay. He was
and his other aircraft had seen us and they thought we were Pakistanis. We thought they were Pakistanis. And they
my God.
Get behind me to shoot me down. Fortunately, it was dark and the gun sight is normally a lit point, by a bulb. And it is kept at low intensity at night. And as the sun was coming up, he had to brighten it. While his aircraft was closing in, he went down and increased the brightness. By now, his aircraft was closer. The light conditions was better. His gun figure was out. His figure was on the gun to fire. And I tell you, those 4 guns firing, it's very difficult to get away from it. And suddenly he saw that it was a Hunter aircraft and he broke off.
Was there no communication about their flying, sir, at the same time?
When you are flying in war condition, basically you do not talk because when you talk, the enemy could be following your RT communication. Most of the flying is done with total silence. And they would have been on a different frequency. We could have been on a different frequency. And we don't know what frequency they are on.
Did they come from the same airbase or
same airbase? Same type of aircraft. I was from 20 squadron. They were from 27 squadron.
Squadrons were different. Okay.
And a good friend of mine, very good friend of mine, and who saved me that day was Sun God. There's a famous saying in English. It says, the sun, in spite of being busy, very busy, trying to keep the entire planetary positions in balance, also finds enough time to give warmth to a small blade of grass to grow. That day, I was the blade of grass where the sun God kept mercy and looked after me. अगर गलावत ने मार दी होती ना राव साहब अगर गलावत ने गोली मार दी होती और मैं नहीं होता if I was dead people would have been singing दोस्त दोस्त ना रहा.
I think you said he was almost ready to fire you. No, I think our Galawat sir was very close to firing you. Almost he prepared to fire.
Almost.
Why did he stop firing? Why did he stop?
Because he recognized it. Okay. Closer range and brighter light, he realized that it is aircraft like that.
So it was
I was telling you about this song from a movie called Sangam, okay? Dost Na Raha. It's a movie with Raj Kapoor, Rajendra Kumar and Vaijayanti Mala. And Raj Kapoor is an Air Force officer flying the Canberra aircraft in the movie.
Okay.
And this movie was, what a coincidence, was shot when I was a trainee in the National Defence Academy. They were all there.
Okay.
Yeah. Anyway, I was lucky, survived to fight another day. In the squadron, back to everything. And the next day, when I was not flying, I was told that a bomb has exploded next to my room.
Okay.
Now, that was serious because I had to go and check out the state of my room. So, with other pilots who had rooms next to mine, we took a jeep and drove off to the barracks where we were staying.
Sir.
As we were crossing the runway, the air raid siren blew and we had to jump off the jeep and get into trenches. I got to see one of the most beautiful sights of the war.
Sir.
Those of you see the Mirage aircraft, PAF was flying Mirage aircraft also. 5 Mirages came and pulled up over Pathankot, one behind the other, and got into a dive.
Oh.
Seeing them pull up and roll into a dive
Okay.
was beautiful. It would be a treat for any flyer.
Live action.
Even as I watched, they were dropping bombs one after the other, and I watched the bombs.
Okay.
Some fell behind me, some fell ahead of me, but I'm alive. I'm sitting in front of you. See? I was safe.
So lucky you are. So lucky you are. I'm saying lucky for the second time.
Oh, yes. I told you, no, I'm very lucky. And my luck has brought me to meet up with Rao Garu and VrC.
Rather, it's our luck, sir. We are able to listen to your story.
Anyway, we reached our room, okay? And
Sir.
my room looked like the houses in a village called Singnapur. Those who know Singnapur. Singnapur is a village near Shirdi, and nobody locks their homes. They can't lock it
Okay.
because there are no doors in those homes. There's no
Okay.
windows, no doors. It's all open, and
Sir.
nobody steals anything. It's a very, very safe place. So because of the bomb blast, my window door had blown off. Part of the roof had caved in. I walked inside. My clothes were in tatters, photographs, pictures, books. Everything was all over the place. Furniture was broken, but I smiled. You know why? I was so lucky, as you say. I was not in the room when the bomb exploded, and I was alive. In the mess
Okay.
that was in the room were also my roommate's belongings.
Okay.
My roommate, Flying Officer Muralidharan, another good pilot, did not return from the first mission of the first day of the fourth
Oh my God.
part of war. On the 11th of December, I was detailed to lead a formation close air support. The latter part of the war, we had stopped hitting airfields and we had started supporting the army in their fight against the Pakistan army. I was to carry out a strike in Poonch area. When you attack an airfield, it's very clear. It's Pakistani airfield you attack, it is your enemy area. But when you attack the army units, remember the forward line where the army is fighting is very flexible. Depending on which army is pushing the other one, the border keeps moving forward or backward. And to make sure that you don't attack your own troops, we have a pilot's position along with the army called FAC, called Forward Air Controller. And two of our pilots, Pilot Officer Talwar and Pilot Officer Thapar, were posted there with the army. And they were to control us that day. There is also an army officer in the Air Force station who briefs you on the army situation. We took off. Poonch is further up northwest of Pathankot, flying through the valleys. Of course, it was no time to enjoy the beauty of valley. We had to keep our eyes open, looking for enemy aircraft. We reached the IP. IP is a point on our side of the border from where the FAC makes visual contact with you and guides you to the target. Reaching the IP, I was calling out for the FAC, but there was no response. My number 2, Flying Officer Devonte, a course mate and a good flyer, he also tried to call them, and we didn't know what to do because there was no response. We started orbiting over the IP, waiting for them to come up. And then suddenly the Arctic crackled into life, and I could hear them. I could hear the pilots, those pilots on the ground, fighting with each other. It was like a village tap scene. And they were all fighting. Each one was fighting to catch hold of the microphone to control us. And the press, that PTT, that is the transmit button was pressed. It's my chance, my turn to control. And anyway, at last one of them got hold of the mic and he guided us onto the target. Unfortunately, the target was on a hill slope and there were mountains all around and we could not have attacked it in the normal conventional way. Because the weapons we carried those days had to be fired in a dive in a particular angle and at the correct speed and the correct range you fired them. The location was such. They had done a brilliant job. You could not attack them. I had to quickly decide of an alternate way to attack. And I pulled the aircraft up vertically. And I went up. I briefed my co-pilot with the number 2 accordingly. He kept my tail clear, reaching about 10,000 feet. I put the aircraft in almost a vertical dive. And I carried out an attack with 2 rocket pods that I had carried that day. It was devastating. And I hit the target. Then I got behind my number 2 and he carried out a similar attack. After the attack, we returned and in the debrief, even as we watched, we went for the debrief. The JLO was all smiles because he had got the report back from the army and we had been very successful. For some reason, by the 12th or 13th of December, our two squadrons, 20 and 27, were pulled back to Hindon. And on questioning, we were told that we've been